Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks, Mal. The Premier League's back. Both teams in blue won. Now let's go.
Yeah, really exciting weekend. Oh yes, let us, as you say, crack on with our property news. First up this week, OpenRent has been significantly invested in by CVC, one of the big private equity firms. The initial shareholders, the original founders who set out back in 2012, still very much involved, it says. So yeah, it'd be quite an interesting move. Just for those that aren't as familiar with the business model, they essentially OpenRent charge landlords a reasonably small fee per month to advertise their properties on the likes of Rightmove and other portals. So yeah, pretty much a kind of vote of confidence, certainly in that business and perhaps in the sector at large. Matt, what do you make of it?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Especially after the Renters' Rights Act coming in and people may be wondering how OpenRent's model was going to deal with all that extra legislation and compliance burden. I certainly think from a market point of view, the fact that they're investing in it does follow private equity investing heavily in the likes of Lohman, Dexter's, LRG, etc., doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's the first time. And an interesting one as well for me, because OpenRent is a bit of an unknown, or certainly they don't put themselves out there a lot in sort of the circles that other letting agents move in, like Adam Hislop and Darius Bradbury are very much sort of the founders, but also sort of stay clear of a lot of the companies that we sort of talk to from both agency and technology point of view, right? So I'm sure CVC have seen some opportunities to both grow OpenRent's market share, but probably seeing a lot of ancillary income streams that they can maybe add to.
Yeah, and like you say, it's whether the business model is going to evolve. Are they looking at how they can leverage their relationships with landlords to sell them more products and services? How does it actually play out with the likes of Rightmove? So you may remember last year there was quite a lot of controversy. I think the OpenRent contract with Rightmove came up. Rightmove tried to charge them a significant jump in increase in their monthly fee, and I think OpenRent then threatened to come off. And in the end, it seems that Rightmove blinked and said, actually, there's 20, I think they've got something like 27% of the market in terms of rentals. So if they were to come off Rightmove, that would be a massive hit to Rightmove's claims to cover the market. When that renewal comes up again, and maybe it's every couple of years, it's going to be interesting to see how that negotiation goes now that it's pretty sure that they've got a bunch more cash. And, OpenRent kind of needs the access via Rightmove to for their landlords to all of the eyeballs as well. So it's I suspect obviously that this has been done with a view to 5xing the value of the business over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive they play in the market. And obviously for lettings agents out there, that could be really quite interesting. Also with Dwelly kind of coming and hoovering up loads of lettings agents as well, right?
Yeah, indeed. I did wonder about. So I was surprised that you found an angle for Rightmove in there as well. But it was very much a talk of the town, wasn't it, at the time? And as I say, coming back to the Renters' Rights Act, the sort of the idea that there's all this extra legislation, and really, OpenRent is seen as a landlord advertising direct to portals, and that was the biggest issue, wasn't it, with Rightmove? So. A lot of agents I speak to are actually finding landlords sort of upgrading to full management to deal with that extra compliance burden. And maybe they are looking at Dwelly and thinking, is there some tech in there that OpenRent can utilise? And will they start doing a Dwelly and buying other rent books and some actual letting agents up? It'd be interesting to keep an eye on it, won't it?
Yeah, 100%. All right. Next up, also in the acquisitions sphere, HomeTrack. Once part of the Zoopla property group / Houseful, has been acquired by Providence, another one of the private equity firms, from Silver Lake. So Silver Lake, you will recall back in 2018, acquired the whole of the Zoopla property group, including the likes of HomeTrack and Zoopla itself, and Uswitch, and what became Alto, the business for all the property software. It acquired that for $2.2 billion. Now it seems to be essentially selling off the family silver, and HomeTrack probably being the most valuable of those particular assets at this point in time. So yeah, Matt, another big move, and again another kind of big investment from private equity. What's your take?
It's another interesting one, isn't it? Following on from the OpenRent and the PE movements around it, but I think with Zoopla, we've known for a while it was getting sort of divvied up into the three sectors around sort of CRM, the portals and the utilities, and the fact they're selling off HomeTrack, as you say, it's the prized asset, isn't it? And I think the quote from Charlie Bryant was quite an interesting one, saying that it marks an exciting new chapter for HomeTrack. Sorry, not Trap. Maybe that's a market-leading platform. But I think HomeTrack was pretty much the market-leading platform when they first bought it, wasn't it? And I think it was the one that a lot of people went to for the data.
Yeah, and still do. So, I think that there's some crazy stat like, 80-90% of transactions have some touch of the data that this particular business uses. Obviously, they've got a lot of deals with lenders and things like that to kind of automate the valuation of those products and the properties, so they can sell the products in. So yeah, it was always the kind of crown jewel, was always the kind of the bit that was pumping out money. I think the last stats that were available back in 2023 showed that their profit margins were up at like about 40-45%, whereas Zoopla was down at sort of 20. So yeah, very much the kind of as you say, the sort of crown jewels. I do think it kind of indicates that perhaps Silver Lake's patience is starting to kind of come to an end, and perhaps we will see Alto and Zoopla itself being sold. City.am's most recent kind of quote was something like £500 million, the valuation that they've got for Zoopla. But to this point, nobody seems to be willing to kind of pay that much, right? So yeah, going to be interesting to see whether this is the beginning of the end of Silver Lake's involvement with that group, with those entities. But yes, I'm sure there'll be lots more to talk about it in the coming weeks as we see what happens to the rest of the kind of stable. All right, next up, we want to talk about mansion tax. So the story over the weekend from a couple of broadsheets was around this £2 million mansion tax and how it's going to be policed, basically. So we are going to have the valuation office people coming round to your mansions to see whether they think it's worth £2 million or not. Feels a little bit intrusive. I'm sure that there will be a lot of complaints from a lot of very noisy people who have very loud megaphones via the press and others that this is very much an invasion of privacy and so on. But Matt, what's your thoughts?
I wonder if they'll be targeting specific people as part of this. People who get, was it 5 million bonuses or gifts as part of their not campaign tracked. No, so I guess things have got to start somewhere, right? And in the same way as if you just suddenly start saying every property that was a certain size and a certain style is in falling into a band, then there'd be the counter argument, wouldn't there? That it needs to be more controlled and a better view of it. But it's going to cause noise, as you say, and it'd be interesting to see how it falls out. Are you expecting a knock on the door?
No, not this week. So I think you're right. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see how they try and deal with some things like land, because is it just the house or is it the value of the overall plot? What happens with flats? Because, leasehold and, actually, how are they going to find the people that actually the ultimate beneficiaries of owners of particular properties and so on. So it's, as you say, they've got to start somewhere. But it kind of feels like there is going to be a lot of noise. I think there's a consultation that starts next year, but the date they've penciled in is April 2028 for this to actually come in. But yes, there's going to be a lot more on this as we go through the next year for sure. All right, that is our property news for this week. Let's get involved with our AI and tech news. All right, Matt, plenty to be talking about in the tech space this week. We have spoken before about ads coming into OpenAI. So if you are on the cheaper tier or the free tier, then you will now find that there are ads mixed in with your results, with your answers, if you are in one of 31 countries that they are trialing this with right now. So Matt, it's kind of finally landed. I think that it was started a couple of years ago when they announced that this was going to be part of their plan. What do you think?
I know I called you the merchant of doom off air, didn't I? Because of the fact that you'd been saying this is going to affect your results and you need to question the things that are being returned. And I genuinely am interested to see how ChatGPT, OpenAI stay clear of being influenced in the responses. I've not actually seen any of the mock-ups of how it looks because I use the page here and it doesn't tend to get screenshotted in the releases. But I know it's taken a longer to come out over here in Europe rather than obviously in the US where it's been for a while because of our data policies. So I think if people are using ChatGPT for free, and then you get used to those ads, and if you don't want to be seeing the ads, then you can pay for the upgrade. And hopefully everyone who listens to this, or most people, are actually paying for some form of subscription so that they can use turn off using my data type settings that we've touched on in the past. But what about you, Mel, Merchant of Doom?
Thanks. So yeah, it just feels a little bit kind of difficult to have that line. So actually, even in the results that we get in our paid for versions, if I don't know, uh, McDonald's is like advertising heavily on ChatGPT on the free tier, does that mean that it is going to get a little bit polluted in some of the results? And there is this kind of ongoing, the narrative around OpenAI is trying to get its IPO together and is racing with Anthropic to do the same. Anthropic has specifically ruled out ads at any point, which is what they will do until they then decide to take ads because it's easy and it's a lot of money. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how much they push that, how hard Anthropic come back at them, or whether Anthropic just actually kind of keep it a bit quiet this time because they want to do their IPO, they want to keep their powder dry and have a story for their investors that, well, maybe we will go down the ads route in due course. We're not really sure. But what ads are providing for people who are on the free tier is the ability to get really much better intelligence. So even if you are on the free tier now, you're getting 5.6, ChatGPT 5.6, because, instead of that being served for free, and every query actually costs money and costs the compute. Actually, somebody is now paying for it, which is the advertiser. So you are upgraded to one of the stronger models. But yes, still, as you say, Matt, you always say is pay 20 quid a month, just because then it secures your data and you make sure that your data doesn't go off and get trained with anybody else. But yes, I don't think this will be the end of that particular story. It will obviously spread to other countries, including ours, over time. And I don't know if it's going to shake people's faith in the answers that they get. And that, I think, is probably my real concern, is around actually how do we know in the end whether these answers are right or not? So yeah, we will see how it all goes. Also on OpenAI, just because we were going to try and mention last week, computer history. This is certainly one that I know you've been following, around how OpenAI is sort of giving you the opportunity to track what you're doing and then replicate it, right?
Very much. And then just on this one, it's another one that's only been released on Mac OS at the moment. So you'll be able to use it on your Apple now. You're free of the Windows Microsoft sort of approach that was coming in for you guys. But it's a case of, it's similar to, or it is a follow on from Microsoft Recall, which, if you recall from a year or so ago, had massive kickback because it basically records everything you're doing on your screen and takes regular screenshots to help it learn how you work. This computer history from ChatGPT does a similar thing, but the idea is that it can then start suggesting to you what you could be doing for you from a agentic point of view, but also helping you sort of say, what have I done today, and getting a summary of the tasks that you've completed. Also, what have I started and not finished, which I'm sure anyone who uses Codex or CoWork quite regularly finds themselves in, which thread did I need to follow on from? Yeah. And just generally sort of sat there as a way of helping even you teach you how to use new skills as well. And this is something we touched on Grokbot last week. And one of the big features of Grokbot is being able to say, look, watch me do something and then pick it up and carry on from here on in. And that's similar with this computer history. You'll be able to get it to teach you, and even at the end of the day, review what you've done and suggest new skills and automation. So it's one I'm quite interested in, whether I go out and buy a Mac to utilize it. What about yourself, Mal?
What I do think is really interesting is the kind of changing narrative around this sort of stuff. And it's always the way, right? Something happens. So, the recall from Microsoft happened and everyone went, oh my God, this is so intrusive and invasive and like privacy. And, how can it watch my keystrokes and, record all this stuff and take screenshots? And then, fast forward a year and a bit later and everyone's like, yeah, it seems pretty good. Seems like just the thing that I really need in my life right now. So, it's with privacy, and it's happened with social media, it's happened with all these things that, previously people were up in arms and pearl clutching going, oh my God, this is like so bad. And then suddenly it's like, yeah, it seems all right. And I think this is also true if you look at things like recording meetings. Again, when that kind of first started, everyone was like, oh, I'm not sure I like all these things in here. But now it's like, yeah, really helpful. So actually...
Do you think with that one, it's gone full circle, though, where people started saying, yeah, these are good. And now a lot of meetings I join, people just have it locked out completely. So do you think maybe that's more that I'm dealing with enterprise style customers, but the bots on meetings specifically seem to be fading away. But I do get what you mean. It's like people initially were like, oh, I'm not going to save my card details in Google Chrome. And then suddenly it's like, you've got Shopify stepping in and then settling up bills for you. It's like just that, where, you feel comfortable with them, and it just becomes part and parcel.
Yeah, it is interesting. So to your point about, the kind of enterprise people wanting bots in there or not, the ones where I've had people kind of kicking them out, it's more for hassle than anything else, really. It's just like, actually not wanting, and that they're paying. It's like retail and various others that are really quite intrusive. Whereas, there's a lot of them on Zoom, for example, it just records, or Teams just records, and it just happens. And almost without you really noticing. And I don't know the last time I've asked anybody whether they're recording it or not, because it's just kind of there. So yeah, look, I don't doubt that there are privacy concerns still around some of this stuff, but I kind of think it's that horse has sort of bolted a bit, right? I think people are kind of just going, well, actually we do need to make these notes, and if it's like, if it is a particular platform, then at least I trust it, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, no, it's and this particular profile computer history. Again, haven't tried it yet, will do. But the idea that essentially it can replicate my keystrokes and just do things much, much, much faster is certainly attractive. We've been looking at a lot of productivity here, and it kind of bleeds into the next story that we're going to talk about, models, where how can we essentially max out productivity? What are the tools? How can we plug in as many APIs as possible into a CRM or hand-built CRM that then actually means that when I open up my laptop in the morning, it's got drafts of all of my emails from overnight ready to go. It's also got all of the bank details in, so we can see the bank account right off the bat. You can see how many support tickets you've got and all that sort of stuff, and all in one place. So yeah, I will give this a go, and we'll let everybody know how it kind of pans out. But yeah, I think it's another very interesting moment where what is convenient overtakes what was concerning, not that many months ago. And on that note about models, you were reading something very interesting last week about how different models are being utilized, right?
That's it. It's like basically it's a bit of a viral news article, or started as a tweet, where it was ranking the top 15 models from sort of A star, as we would call it in you did O levels, didn't you? But GCSEs and A levels.
No, I did GCSEs.
I think they're number based these days. So for S plus with Fable 5 up at the top, right the way down to E with sort of DeepSeek 4. And it created a lot of conversation, mainly because of the fact that it's just a follow on from what we talked about over recent few weeks of where people are using them into certain situations. So enterprise, for example, Fable 5, absolutely flying by enterprise because of the Fable 5 30-day retention policy. Enterprise that just aren't touching it, and those that have access to Glasswing are using Mythos anyway. And then the sort of things that we talked about, and I know you've been looking a lot on, is when to use the open weights, what scenarios to use them for. And actually, there was talk this morning that Hugging Face may well be getting acquired, and they do a lot of this sort of ranking on what models to use in terms of the application, and is sort of seeing what the where people can do this, and quite a lot of the noise and conversation that spins out of it. So when to use what not to use, what are the concerns about it. I know you spent a lot of time on this recently, haven't you, Mal, in terms of what models you use?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's becoming increasingly kind of sophisticated in terms of, the right model for the right job, because you can absolutely burn through zillions of tokens and a lot of cash, Fable 5ing everything. But if it's just like a kind of daily task that goes and summarizes, your emails or something like that, then that's not a Fable 5 task. So how do you deploy DeepSeek, for example, which is like, 0.006p or whatever, rather than, Fable 5 costing you about £1 for the same job. So, I've been spending a lot of time actually over the last week, again, looking at this kind of from a productivity and also cost-effective viewpoint. Here, what we're doing, we're spending, hundreds of pounds a week, if not more, weeks, on building and trialing all these different models. So we're switching out from Opus 5, which obviously is one of the more expensive models, and putting it down to Haiku. Again, just to quickly recap, I've got 8 AI agents, all with different skill sets, all with different names that I basically run under OpenClaw, so I can talk to them all and they can talk to each other. So I've been changing each of them into different models just to see what they do, and how that impacts the cost. So one of the things I did was last week, I cleared down everybody from Opus onto Sonnet. And what I saw was actually just the token usage rocketed. So they had to use more and more tokens to do the same thing that Opus was doing. In the end, it cost me about the same, but the time it took was way, way, way longer. So actually that was kind of a really interesting but kind of false economy. So put many of them back onto Opus and now have got certain of them, so the executive assistant is on one particular model, whereas the IT director is on a different one. And so, yeah, there's lots of really interesting kind of nuance to all of these different things right now. And obviously, we will share as much as we discover as we build. But yes, I think my key takeout from last week is actually some of the more expensive models are really, really valuable. And that level of intelligence is really, really helpful, because if you are time constrained, as we all are, actually getting it to do it fast is a win for the same sort of money, basically.
It's just similar to the analogy.
Right, so
the old analogy of the really experienced plumber or architect that you get round to your property depending on what you're doing, and they might stand there, scratch the chin and solve something in a few seconds or a few minutes because they've seen a huge wealth of these things before, versus the person who spends hours trying to work out where the leak's coming from. And they might be cheaper per hour, but they spend more hours fixing it.
Great analogy. It's exactly like that. And actually, I put a number of them down to the very basic model on ChatGPT Luna, and basically it just started making stuff up. It told me very confidently that it'd done stuff. And then I kind of got one of the Opus models to check. It's like, nah, I haven't done anything. So yes, need to be careful about that. Your plumber's coming round and just sitting having a cup of tea, essentially. Right. That is all about the models. We wanted to show just how cool we are on the Property AI report, didn't we, Matt, by talking about some music, some artists from back in the day who are very focused on the AI world. Matt, what?
So, it's Dr. Dre was the one that I pulled out, but then you obviously pitched in with Will.i.am as well, who I believe is part.
So cutting edge. Look at us.
But joking aside, with the Dr. Dre one, obviously Dr. Dre, way back in the days you put it, was part of NWA, and they didn't write their own music, but they did in terms of utilizing samples, and there's huge backlash in the music industry when sampling first started, which is ironic in a way, because from very early on, a lot of songs that sounded similar to other songs and using chord progressions were sort of ripping off tracks. And, Oasis, who I dearly love, Noel Gallagher is definitely lifted from a lot of other people and sometimes being pulled up on it, and other times maybe got away with it to an extent. But there's always been this trend of standing on the shoulders of giants, right, and learning from other people, whether it's sampling. And
wasn't that one of their album titles?
It's singular is unfortunately misquoted, so a shoulder of the giant. But Dr. Dre's come out and said, actually, in a New York Times article, I think it was, that he thinks AI is great. He thinks there's a lot of producers and artists who are actually using AI already without fessing up to it. So closet AI utilization. And it's not far removed from sort of knowing what you were doing when you were getting samples and picking those out. And okay, when they were doing it, they were finding records in old shops and listening to them and then just picking out the bars and slowing down and speeding up. But being able to sort of unleash your creativity using AI, he thinks is really, really good and really exciting. And Will.i.am is actually coming in from a different angle, isn't he? Because he's looking at his wanting to have this proof of life. And again, he's still pro AI for music, but he wants to have almost a digital fingerprint on music that's created as a proof of life. So you can tell if Mal's actually drummed that track, or whether he's programmed it, or whether he's created it via AI. And that in itself, because he is a bit of an interesting character, Will.i.am, isn't he?
Yeah.
That itself is like this proof of life. If you, I don't know, drum a bar and then just loop it, is that proof of life going to cover the original bar? Or does it get pulled out because they've had to use it for the rest of the track? I think it's great. Obviously, it's straight into my wheelhouse, music and AI. But I think it's great to see how these other industries react. And you regularly talk about how the railroads followed the canals and how the films followed the stage shows. I think this is similar for music, and it's good to see people who are actually pro it rather than just being doom mongers, to be like the phrase of it.
I agree. And so Will.i.am actually is one of the investors in Udio, which is one of the kind of music AI businesses, and has long been a kind of champion for that digital education around sort of what technology in general can do for music, and how it, again, democratizes it and enables even idiots like me to be able to kind of make music and things like that. So yeah, really, really good to see. And yes, I'm sure that, as you say, that maybe perhaps the younger artists aren't quite as confident, haven't done it all yet, so therefore won't necessarily come forward and say that they're using it. But it's good to see some of the older the older guard actually coming out and saying that this is a good thing for music rather than something to be concerned about. All right. Final story is around how much people are paying for AI on a month by month basis. And again, Matt, this is something you picked up over the last few days. How different the top 1% in America of businesses are deploying AI versus the next 10% and then underneath, right?
That's it. And it comes off the back of maybe 4 or 5 months ago where everyone was token maxing and those leaderboards of how quickly people were going to burn through their tokens. And I think that was very much a case of getting people on board to using AI in their work. And I still know developers who I come across who are like, oh no, I'm better than AI. I'm going to crack on and do this myself. And so like token maxing was a phase, and it's amazing how quickly these phases pass, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. It was like a nanosecond.
Yeah, exactly. It was May and we're now at the end of August, and already that's the thing of why would you even have that?
Yeah.
But that's on our sort of conversational side of things, right? I generally do go into companies who are tech companies who are like, no, we're not going to utilize that. And I guess I'm lucky enough to see there's the broad gamut of companies are doing it. And Uber as well, they burnt through their AI budget by April because of the fact that the employees were absolutely hammering it. And I thought what was quite stark here is corporate America's top 1% are spending $7,400 per employee per month on AI. So that was figures from July. Whereas the top 10% are only roughly 650. So it's really sort of stark contrast between that top 1% and the remaining 9%, which I expect there's some in that remaining 9% that are really low, and dragging that 650 average down.
Yeah, I would imagine it's almost quite single double figures, a bit below that. But yeah, it is a really interesting kind of contrast because this is per employee. So even though they are like massive top 1%, they're spending millions and millions on helping their employees to use it. So I guess the big headline from this is, if it's good enough for those businesses, then, not necessarily to the tune of 7,500 or whatever it is per employee, but certainly, perhaps you should be looking at the 1,000, per month, just to see what happens, just to see how you can use it and what you can possibly deploy this stuff for. But yeah, it's just, it is fascinating to me that actually there is just that stark divide. And the fact that the top 1% see the value in it already and are really, really going for it. And perhaps, we'll pull further away as a result. Right, that is our AI and tech news for this week, and we are going to take a little wander through our occasional series, Weird AI of the Week. Right, this is my favorite story this week because the bots have beat bots. So we have a robot that has run the 100 meters faster than Usain Bolt did. Bolt's record has stood since, was it Beijing or was it Tokyo? I can't remember. But yeah, it's 7.9, I think, seconds is the fastest time anybody's ever run the 100 meters. This bot did it in 9.58. So yeah, really, really quite a moment, right?
Incredible, isn't it? And these are very specifically these humanoid robots, right? So they are running it. It's not that they've got like a wheel at the back that they're leaning on and getting pushed along. But I know you also really like the other part of this Weird AI of the Week, which was bots running into walls, right?
Yes, so it's the robotics championship, the second annual robotics championships over in China. So plenty of very, very impressive Chinese bots on display, but also some really, really good fun ones where they run so fast that they actually end up sort of running into walls and blowing themselves up, things like that. Another kind of big milestone this week, and again, if you can find the video, it's incredible. Those that subscribe to the Property AI Report newsletter will have got it on Sunday. But it's a video of a robot jumping from standing start, jumping over 2 meters high. Right? It's insane. And kind of like you think, wow, it can really jump over high walls now then. So that prediction's out. But yeah, it's phenomenal what these things are doing. If you also look back a year at the first robots championships and you see people like humans running alongside basically moving the robots themselves remotely as they run, and they're all kind of falling over and clanking out. But now the change in a year is insane. So if we look at what's going to be happening in a year's time, it's going to be even more insane. But yes, it's fun and games. The robots are doing some superhuman things already. So I think it's just going to get better/worse depending on your perspective. All right, that was our weird AI of the week. Now, tool of the week. Matt, this is Meta.
It is, and it's Meta on a Mac.
Yes, sorry that all Macs get all the fun stuff first. But yes, Meta's AI wants you to talk to your apps, or wants to talk to your apps on your behalf. So yeah, this again, Meta hasn't really been at the cutting edge until quite recently, right? Their super intelligence unit has built out some pretty impressive stuff. Again, Grok has kind of come to the party as well. So there's some outstanding developments taking place right now. Yes, what's your kind of feeling around the kind of uptake with Meta, and is it too late for them really?
I don't think it's too late. I think it's dangerous to cancel anyone or count anyone out, given what we saw happen to Gemini a year ago, and then what managed to happen to Gemini in the last few weeks. And as you touched on, even a couple of weeks ago or months ago, let's go months, you would have thought it was a 2-horse race, and then Grok's come well back in. And like with Grokbot, it seems like people are targeting very much sort of a more personal or even sort of a more mass market approach to AI usage. I think Meta is targeting the enterprise, but it's bringing things in that people might use anyway as part of their sort of wider Meta usage. But the voice is certainly something you've talked a lot about over recent years, isn't it? You basically drive around the country talking to AI. I struggle with it just because of the sort of nature of the working environment I'm in. Not constantly able to talk out loud for these things, but Meta targeting voice and New Spark certainly has been quite impressively received. So worth having a look. It's just, I find myself now happy that there's only 2 I'm really using, because I need to remember which one's got what context and where I'm working on things.
Yeah, so this is presumably much more for those that are using the likes of Facebook ads and Instagram and all that sort of stuff as part of their daily lives, WhatsApp and so on. But yes, I do almost always struggle with just this trust idea. It comes down to, bless him, Zuckerberg, and actually, what's he going to be doing with data? Even if he says, all my data's safe, it's like, is it though? But anyway, it's out there. Go play, see what you think of it. But yes, I think it's going to be one that I'm not necessarily going to dive into too fast. Right, that is all we've got time for this week on the Property AI Report. Thank you for listening in. We will be back again next week with plenty more on the Property AI paired results. So yes, looking forward to catching up again next week. We'll see you in 7 days' time.
Take care, everyone.